I'm just finishing up the Sunfish Worlds. I just finished in here in Lake Garda, Italy. It's the gateway to the Dolomites. I'll give you a quick turnaround on my camera. You can see the venue. So those mountains behind there are about a mile above the lake. So it's pretty spectacular.
Fueling the morning. What is it? The paler in the morning and the ora in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's the aura in the afternoon. It's the so it's really interesting. The morning, starting at you wake up at dawn and there's a nice breeze out of the north. The wind's kind of flowing out of the mountains, that katabatic breeze, and it lasts till like 11. There's like an hour delay, no wind, and then the wind just pipes in from the south. Nice white caps. The foilers are out. The windsurfers are out. The kiteboarders are out. Descent of the lake, they don't even allow powerboats except for support racing boats and things like that. It's pretty cool.
Amazing. All right, so you've just finished up the 94 boat Sunfish World, and how'd you do real quick? Let's give us the rundown.
I ended up 12th. A little disappointed. I had a black flag the last race, and we can talk about management of black flags later. But big fleet management is high on my mind right now, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us sail in our own little local fleets, and every once in a while we go to the big regatta, and it's a whole different game. So it all starts with the start, which gets the lane management, which then opens things up for you. When you're ahead, it's easy, but when you're in the middle, it's just brutal fighting it out. But talk us a little bit about the starting. Let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, I mean, the success in big fleets is lane management. You got to be able to have a lane. You got to hold it. The fleet is too big that if you get sucked in, you lose your lane, and you either end up tacking a lot or sitting in dirty air or both, and you don't win that way. So my good races, I was able to hold the lane and take advantage of that. And my not so good races, which I had a few, something went a little wrong, and before you know it, I was in that pinball machine.
And that pinball, inside that pinball machine is all of those who have qualified for these events, and there's some big pinballs.
That's right. It's not just 94 boats. It's a pretty deep 94 boats. So because you had to qualify to be there, which is true with the J24 Worlds or anything else that you've been to. And once you have a qualification system, it makes it so there aren't many marshmallows out there.
All right, so again, with Lake Garda, the race course is a little more narrow than you might have like an open ocean or a big venue, so that certainly changes things and compresses it, right? But like, how do you shift your approach and your mindset to go from small fleet to big fleet?
So I'm always thinking about that lane management, including at the start, but I'm thinking really big picture. I'm trying to keep the boat moving, tack less, and sometimes even having to go to an edge if you gotta. Whereas in a smaller fleet, you can kind of pick and choose your lane, and it's not as critical for that sort of thing. But really, it starts at the start with you kind of realizing that it's not so easy just to go ping both ends. If you got a boat that pings, or get line sights where you want to, and maybe get back to where you started. Like if you wanted to start at the pin, if we probably had over a half a mile long line in the Sunfish, and if you're in a 25-foot boat, that might be close to a mile to get enough room for everybody. You just can't get from one end of the line to the other in time in a 5-minute sequence. So as soon as the line's set, I'm thinking about my strategy, where I want to start, what the most important pieces of the homework are, so I get it in time before those flags go up.
You make sure to, when you end up with these long lines, to just always hover near the end where you need to be and never get sort of past midline, or how committed are you to being at the end that you need to be?
Absolutely committed. Like if I want to start at the pin, I know I'm not going to get to the boat to maybe even see the course. You got to rely on something else, and you just can't do it. So it's really interesting. Sometimes if I want at the pin and I kind of hang out there, it's pretty quiet because people that are at the boat wait for the flags to go up. They just can't make it down in time. And even if they do, they're a little flustered. They're kind of rushing their way through. So,
All right, well, let's presume then you get a good start, and it then becomes about holding that lane. That's that sort of first couple minutes that are critical, right?
Yeah, but let's go back to the start a little bit more. So not just deciding where you're going to start. I find there's a couple of really big differences. I find that there's plenty of low density areas in a smaller fleet, and I can find a nice hole. I find that a lot of times, if if it ends favorable, people want to get there, and it's super crowded. And so I spent a lot of time in my pre-start loop as I'm going back. I'm looking for just staying in low density. I want to stay out of traffic. And I also need to set up on that last tack, that starboard tack to the, my final tack. There's some worlds I end up tacking, almost 2 minutes to the start. Because if you don't, there's just no lane. There's just no spots for you. If it's a little bit of a short line, you got to establish yourself early. And then the final problem I think is different is in a smaller fleet, I can always find my line sight. If you're pinging, it's not the problem, but if it's a smaller fleet, I can always, there's my line sight. And a big fleet, there's just so many boats, like I lose it. And then I feel like if I go out and get in front of everybody to see it, then I'm exposed. The race committee might be writing down my number. So I end up kind of starting more with a group around me in a big fleet because I just don't know where the line really is. So, if I happen to see my line sight, sure, I'm happy to take advantage of a line seg, but I don't want to pop out and be like, oh. So I just kind of go with the group and hope for the best. And if you're fast, you can get away with that.
Yeah, so the sort of late port tack approach, looking for hunting for holes, becomes very problematic.
I did not this world, but another world recently. I didn't like my spot, so I jived around. With like a minute and a half to go, I'm like, I'll look for a spot, and I never found one. I ended up starting on port near the boat. I just duck feel. It actually wasn't a bad start, but it was. I never tacked onto starboard because I couldn't. There was nowhere to go.
Going against the grain immediately.
It was a terrible feeling though. I'm like, I was panicked by the end. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's get going back up the beat. Again, this sort of lane management. I mean, you can visualize, right? You get the first couple of minutes are key. You might be looking over your shoulder to tack to get right, or you sort of like you may be stuck with that group, right? That you just launched with. So you're trying to hold a lane, trying to look for your spot to go back. How do you balance concentrating?
So I think we always kind of joke it's almost easy. You just get a lane, go fast, speed. I don't look over my shoulder. Single-handed boat, sure, maybe a tactician is, but everybody is 100% focused on speed for a minute or so. And then, if you do get a start in a lane and you are going fast, it's kind of like there's a group of you in the front row. And now it becomes kind of a smaller regatta again because everybody else that's pinballing or in dirty air is falling back and you're going to cross them. So I don't even worry about tacking unless I really want to. My pre-race strategy is to tack soon. I want to go right, like was actually the case here. You got to go to the wall sometimes.
Right.
In those cases, I didn't mind tacking, taking a bunch of sterns and just getting going that way. But most of the time, I just get going, go as fast as I can, put the blinders on. Then I stick my head up and say, okay, what do we want to do?
And do you have a sense of, you have a certain amount of time on starboard tack that you can just focus on speed and not worry about getting to the left corner?
Correct, because it's such a long course. It's a long bead. It's a 15-minute bead, so I can go a solid 5 minutes before I know I'm even anywhere near it. And I'm aware if the course is skewed, and that might be different. But if it's a fairly square course, you can go like 5 minutes of sailing is a long time to just put your head down and go fast. And we've done that, like you just minutes of speed. I can give you a story about that. I was in a Worlds and we were doing pretty well. We were like fifth going to the last race or something. And we were in one of the top contenders, a second place boat. I won't tell you who they were. We both had good starts and lanes, and I looked up and the usual suspects were in that front row, and I couldn't tell you which was ahead, him or I. And then at some point I'm like, we got to go back. My tactician said tack, and I did, and they're like, I'm not sure we're crossing this route. And they put it on me. They said, Mike, it's up to you. And I just made it by, like that much, and I got through the group, and I looked at this other boat behind me. It was in second in the regatta. and they probably missed it by that much, and they had to tack back. They ended up like 8th in the regatta. They got like a 40 at that race, and we moved up into 2nd, I think. It was amazing. It was like that much difference between the two boats after 6 minutes of sailing. Made all the difference. It was crazy. It was really eye opener to me, actually.
It's probably a good thing. Would you add it to sort of your pre-race kind of routine? We go out, we sort of, we're out the race course an hour ahead. We sail the first beat to actually, but know, sort of how much time you're going to spend on that starboard tack and where you are relative to the course to sort of just, I guess what we're getting is it's hard for us to sort of, it seems like a long time, but 5 minutes goes by pretty quick of just 5 minutes of absolute speed focus is different.
Yeah, exactly. So, if it's if it's one of these courses that's a little shorter, you're aware of that, or skewed. Maybe it isn't 5 minutes on starboard, or maybe it's even longer. It's a little light. So there's two kind of critical pieces of information I like to know before I start. And that is like, how much time do I have on starboard before I can put my head up, or I have to put my head up? Is it 3 minutes, or is it, 7, or is it 10? That makes a big difference. And then the second one is, how many tacks am I willing? It's related. It's like sort of how many tacks am I willing to do? And, you think with a 15-minute beat, you could do 10 tacks or 7 tacks. But man, in a world championship, if you're tacking 10 times, unless it's a really weird wind, crazy, shifty, blustery, you're probably not winning if you tack 10 times. Like we're often saying, I think this is a 2 to 4 tack beat, like 2 if we're winning. We're going to go 5 minutes. We're going to go shy of the port ley line. We're going to go left. Then we're going to go all the way to the starboard ley line. And if we're not winning, if we're winning, we're just doing 2 tacks. If we're not winning, we might do one more setup at the weather mark. 2 to 4 tacks, or we say 4 to 6. It's really rare. We're saying, 8 tacks. We expect an 8 tack beat, It's like you scale up a small race course and you just make it bigger, but you still do the same pattern up it, same number of tacks. Just so you just spend a lot more time on a tack, which really puts an emphasis on going fast.
And that kind of presumes you're in that front wave. There's a couple times, imagine this week in Garda, you were in the middle, bouncing around.
Sadly, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about some big fleet management when you're stuck in the middle? What are some key points?
So what I do if I don't have that good start, first thing I'm doing is looking for a way out that I can get on port. I am looking up now. Like, okay, so I suppose I'm not one of those top group that can just focus on speed. I start looking at when is my way out, because maybe I can get a clean lane, duck a few boats, and wait for a little gap. Like if I can hold on just a little while, I can get a gap out on port. Maybe I can get clear for a while. Still won't be great. Some people have a jump on me, but at least I'm free for a while. And then the other thing I do is I weigh the, do I just want to get tacked on all the time and all back and forth, or can I take this kind of compromised lane? It's not awful. Like sometimes I tack on purpose in somebody's bad air, but it's like 10 boats back. So it's not so bad. And I also know if I tack in that person's bad air 10 boat back, the next 10 boats that are coming by, which are going to happen if they're deep, they're not going to tack there because now they're only 5 boats back or something. So I often take those compromised lanes, looking further ahead, saying it's not great, but it's better than the alternative. I went for the perfect lane, and somebody ahead of me is going to say that's a good lane. I'm taking it. So sometimes a little bit of a shy lane, a little bit of a bad lane is better than the alternative.
What about when you're behind? This would be the next phase, that when you're just, let's say you've had a terrible start and you're just trying to chip your way back into the middle. What's kind of the one thing to get you out of jail?
Yeah, so you sort of end up committing, unless it's really shifty and you can play the middle. In a big fleet stuff, it often isn't. It's often you're setting a worlds not in a lake, small lake, blustery kind of venue. So often it's just, okay, which side am I going to really commit to? All right, I think the right's going to work. Boom. Send it. Just go all the way. You're behind already, but at least you're not in that pinball machine up the middle. And you're not going to, you're losing this whole time to the leaders. So you got to sort of recognize that you're not trying to catch back up the first. You're just trying to make it so it's not your throw out, or you still want to keep her.
Saving points. Okay, so let's
yeah. So just to add to that, though, on top of that, I just keep doing the right things. Like even though I say that, like I don't just roll the dice on that. I'm like trying to make a really educated guess. I think the right's going to work. Boom, send it. And then, make good decisions around the course and let other people make some mistakes, fall back. And if you're fast and you do that, often you can recover to something.
And just like when you had a good start to go, and you got to focus speed to go the way to get you out of jail. Don't
right. You put the blinders back, and once you've decided, take that compromise line and you just milk it for all it's worth. Gotcha. Other people get pinballed and do other crazy things. Yeah.
All right, the chaos point in these big fleets, and I've seen some pictures from the Sunfish Worlds, the weather mark. First beat, you got boats coming in every direction. How do you manage that part of the game?
Well, unless I'm way behind, in which case, it's kind of a moot point. There's some big losses. I would say, gains as far as number of boats, but there's very little gains in distance made at these marks. And I think that there's some magic moves up there that are better than others. And what doesn't work is either ley line. It seems good. You're kind of going right, for example, and you're like, I'll just go all the way ley line. It's not that many boats around. It's a 94 boat fleet. Like even if you're doing pretty well and there's 30 ahead of you, eventually most of those 30 are just going to come to they have to go to the ley line eventually. And sooner or later, you're just going to get tacked on and tacked on and tacked on. So I find there's just sort of magic ley line below the ley line, maybe 10, 15 boat lengths below it, that the wind, you're far enough away back to those compromise lane that most people don't like. So they're not going to tack on you. But there's still enough wind that you're still moving just fine because you're 10 boat lengths away. It's kind of my magic number. So if I want to go right and I'm not winning, I just go shy of the ley line, maybe 10, 15 boat lengths. And then the magic is at the very end. When do you cut back in? And I don't like to take a lot of risk here. And so I think the magic time to go tack back in is about 5 boat lengths. Anything less, somebody thinks you're tacking in the 3 boat lane zone. Everybody's idea where the 3 boat lane zone. Some foreigner is going to be yelling agua at you, agua, 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 banging their tiller and stuff like that, and rightfully so. Like you're kind of like that disruptor. But also, as you get kind of in that 3 boat lane zone, people that are overstood, there's a lot of them because you get tacked on, they tack back out, and they're all funneling in. Like by the time you get to 3 boat lanes, there's very few pads through. So I think that just about 5 boat lanes out is right before it all compresses. And so what if I have to make a couple big ducks? I've really gained that. That's my sacrifice I make because I didn't throw a 20 by overstanding by 10, and having to come back.
Yeah, and in the overstand mode, you end up you've overstood, but you're also sailing at bad air. So you've got the 2 to 1 of sailing on the shy ley line. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. It's all bad. Yeah, agreed.
And how about the exit out of these marks? Presuming how do you basically take control to have the option to jibe and go left if you need to and go right? I mean, how do you set yourself up to go the way you want?
So somewhere before that 5 boat lane zone, I decide what I'm going to do on the downwind. So I'm saying, hey, I'm coming in, and boy, it's a righty. There's more wind on the right. I got to jibe. And so I'm thinking about that, before I even round the weather mark. I remember I was at a big regatta and Will Harris was crewing for me, and we wanted to jibe, and we're overlapped. I'm trying to roll the guy, and he's like, "Don't we want to jibe?" And he just kind of let the jib out and let it luff. We kind of let him go. We jibed, and we're right on the jibe we wanted to. So if you're getting caught in your little battles, you're gonna get sucked into whatever the fleet's doing. You need to make that jump right away. If you want a jibe set, you jibe right away and establish yourself there. If you wait a little bit, somebody behind us, so many boats, somebody's going to jibe, somebody's going to jibe on them. You can never get back. So you've lost your opportunity. And same as if you're going to go straight set. I definitely kind of get in the high lane, maybe even set a little late, get myself established out there. What you don't want to do is, it's okay to go down the middle, but you got to do it once everybody kind of spreads out, and you got to have a clear lane behind you, kind of like the upwind at 10, 15 boat lanes. As long as they're more than 10 or 15 boat lanes behind, for the most part, I feel like I'm in clear air. And that's becomes one of those compromised lanes again, too. Somebody else doesn't want to go. The next guy, 5 boat lanes behind you, isn't going to go there because they're even closer.
And then once you get into that middle, can you explain a little bit about fleet management when you have boats on the side, boats in the middle? What do you find is the most successful but yet conservative way to get down the run in these big fleets?
Well, it's really tough to cross the middle. So I only do that if I really feel like I made the wrong call at the top, and which happens maybe in lighter wind. But I think in the really big fleets, you commit early and you just own that side, for better or for worse. Because if you don't, then you never literally, if you cross, you never really you give it a chance. You never let it play out. So like I said, unless you were wrong or something changed, you got to do that. And for the most part, it's the long tack that you want to be on, and it gets you partway. It gets you closer to the mark. The only exception to that is as you get to the bottom, you do have one last chance, maybe 80% down the run, to cross over to get to the other gate. These big fleets of worlds will have a gate, and you're playing one side. If you wait to the bitter end, you just can't get across the other one. You're outside, there's no air in the middle. So somewhere on 80%, you got to say, I really want the other gate. And I got to just kind of like reach up and bob and weave and get on that side. It's no other way. But
which is quite similar to the kind of the inside lane of the where the mark is. You sort of gotta commit to that, having some options early on rather than waiting for them to magically happen for you.
Yeah, I'm committing. Really 80% of the beat, I'm already deciding what I want to do on the run. 80% on the run, I'm deciding what I want to do on the next beat. And that's what goes into play on which gate I want. And, like in a smaller fleet, even if they have a gate, if I want to go right, for example, I can round the left gate looking downwind and go right, or I can round the right gate looking downwind and tack. And sometimes I really like to do that in a smaller fleet. Really hard to do in a bigger fleet. There's just all these boats coming down. And sometimes you're kind of reaching into the edges, crossing that middle ground. I think you really have to pick the gate in the direction you want to go, and because that commits you to that side. It's just so hard to get over to the other side. Really
okay. Real quick on gates.
Yeah.
How do you get in and out of the chaos without it?
Well, I think it starts with sort of understanding what's going on at 80% down. So you're deciding which gate you want and establishing yourself. I think it's really worth, you got to read the situation. If there's kind of a pack all trying to get inside each other, sometimes they slow each other down, and you can kind of take the low road and pass them. But it's risky because you're kind of outside this pinwheel. And so as I get closer and closer, maybe 10, 15 boat lanes out, I'm really trying to get on the inside and communicate early. Things happen fast. And if I haven't already established that I have an overlap or don't, it's impossible. And at the last minute, you can get just hosed in a big fleet. Like somebody doesn't agree with you that you broke the overlap, and they jam it in there, and then the next 5 people go too because you're outside of it. So I find the early communication, look them in the eye and say, you have no room. You have no room. Number 2, you have no room. Like you got to overdo it because people can't help themselves.
What is the international? Once you get into the worlds and you've got some Italians over there, what is the verbiage that you need to be very clear about? Just the word no.
Pretty
universal.
I think sign language works a lot. Like you point at them, you're like, no way, no way, no way. And I think the universal language that I have room is, and that they're mad at you, is when they say agua 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 and they pound the deck with the tiller extension. It's quite intimidating.
Excellent. Okay, so summarize it up for me, and then we'll get to the black flag that sort of took you down out of the top 10 there. This summarize the big fleet management.
Big fleet management is, honestly, one of the things I work on. It's impossible to hold that lane in the world unless you're fast. So you're getting into some lane, you're doing everything you can to find a lane. Hopefully you get a good start and you get it. If you're fast, you're gonna hold it. If you're not, if you didn't get a great start, you're trying to find one, and you're fast, you're more likely to hold it. You're gonna make a comeback if you're fast. So I'm always trying to not overtack. There's a bunch of don'ts. You don't overtack. You don't go to the ley lines. And there's a bunch of do's. You do plan really far ahead before each mark, because once you get in the mess, you can't even think about the next leg. And, and you don't tack too many times. And that's really it, Get a start a lane, go fast, and don't tack much. Then plan ahead, and it sounds easy when you do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you always make it sound easy, but okay. So what? Not so easy. This black flag. It's, oh man, what a kicker on your score line. But there's a little more to the story. I understand. Tell me about it and what you learned from it.
I've definitely gotten my fair share. Actually, at the last Sunfish Worlds, I made a mistake which was my first. I'm pretty new to the sunfish. I think that I was exposed early, and they started writing numbers down, and then I'd kind of go and try to find my line sight, be exposed, and then I'd kind of fall back into the fleet. But by then they already had my number. And I think that's a common tactic of race committees. They, all these boats are going, 100 boats are crossing the line at the same time, and they get what they can, right? And so if you're exposed early, you're in trouble. And so I've done that mistake in the past, and I was bound and determined not to do that this regatta. So I held back a little more, and like we talked about before, I went with the fleet. The black flag this year was a little different. There was a recall. It was the last race of the regatta. They knew this morning breeze was going to die, and they really wanted to get that race in. So they went right into the sequence right away with a black flag. The first start was not a black flag, and there's a group of us were pretty far through the committee boat, and we all didn't know it was a recall. And we were all in our little battle, put the blinders on and go fast. I was pretty sure it wasn't over, so I wasn't even thinking about that. I just wanted to beat the guy next to me, above me and below me. That's all that mattered. And we were all thinking the same thing, because nobody turned around. And then all of a sudden, one boat turns around, the rest of us looked, and they were in sequence again, and they went right into it. So we all kind of went back, and a bunch of us didn't make it. Evidently, they told me I missed it by maybe 5 seconds. I was just coming downwind still. I was about to jibe around the committee boat. It's my fault, but it's a little disappointing to get a black flag for not even trying to be over. Just trying to get back. I didn't get any advantage by doing this. But there's always a lesson learned to all these things, and that was, even though you got to put your blinders on, you still got to be aware. A lot easier in a boat with more than one person, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Well, that's a bummer. I mean, there's also, I guess, the lesson. We have this mentality, right, of no matter what, every start you kind of go for a minute or two, just get a sense, even if it's a recall. But you don't know how fast the racing is going to flip around and get another start. So maybe the lesson is that if it's a recall, hedge and turn back as soon as you can, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. If I had known it was one, I wouldn't have kept going. I wasn't trying. It was windy. My legs were pretty tired from the week. I wasn't trying to go sail just for the sake of sailing. I just really didn't. I did what I just said. It was the right thing to do. Get a good start. I had a lane, but I had to put every ounce of my energy into holding that lane, because a bunch of the people around me had good starts too, and I didn't want to get sucked in. So, I still probably could have just, done a quick glance around and not lost anything. So that's the lesson learned.
There you go. All right, cool stuff. Well, we could probably go on for days, but it looks like the aura, we can hear it in your mic. It's breezy, and you gotta go. You gotta want to go do something, right? You can do some kiteboarding or
I
something.
can't wait to go foiling winging here. That's my I'm gonna go spend some time here and go zip around. That's gonna be a blast.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Mike, for great insight, and congratulations on that was a good, solid performance over the Worlds. It was, where's it next year?
In Ecuador.
All right.
I haven't been there, but everybody tells me it's a pretty awesome spot.
Excellent. All right, and you got the Peruvians to look over and find out what's going on there, huh?
Exactly.
They're fast. All right, cool. Well, enjoy the winging. We'll see you when you get back in the country.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.